understand. I wasn't trying to put anything on the show.
I wanted to stream these channels like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like trying to get that.
I'm ready. But yeah.
We'll see. It's an old phone.
I'm writing an essay right now about the fact that when I was growing up,
I didn't bring any of those because you should have turned it one way or the other.
8 different places like black houses.
Cool.
And the reason why is the newsstand market was still viable, but the market and there were head shops.
Right.
The head shop.
The first shop I visited, like, months later,
Not because the microphone quality.
That's hilarious.
Do you order up the microphone? in my system.
Mike,
Just make sure you cut us off at a certain
Yeah.
Mike.
But we're the last panel today.
Yeah.
So if we go long, it's not a problem.
But yeah.
From a retailer?
Never.
Sorry, I saw you.
Oh, no worries. No worries. My brain.
Remember Chris, right?
Will you buy these comics?
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna believe it. Chris gets up and I'm
I can jump in. Clear it up.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Find anything good? I almost bought one.
So what do you got?
We turned the volume up.
No, it does stay off. Does stay off.
Stay off?
Nice,
Yeah.
right?
Is that one not working?
What about that?
No, there.
It's interesting that I wrote a good gag review.
Yeah.
When I did that back then, they sent me Xeroxes.
Black and white?
Yeah, which doesn't do justice. They didn't turn it off.
An extra phone somewhere? I have my program book and phone somewhere. Oh, it's over here.
I said they're gonna surprise you.
Yeah, and I just can't get rid of it.
That's good.
Curiosity, is yours not working out, or is it what's the longest?
No.
But yeah, no. Revisited Buffalo.
Oh, I see what it is. I see what it is. All right, now you know.
Nice. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
Testing, testing. I've heard tales about great shows.
Tell me when you're ready for this.
I think it.
You ready? Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this retailing panel. I pitched this to Shelton originally as let's sort of talk about the past and how it's different from today, because you know I have a lot of memories from starting off and things like Heroes World and all kinds of crazy things that have happened, and I think I might argue that it's actually worse today than it was 20 or 30 years ago.
It's much worse.
Yeah. So I thought it would be an interesting and fruitful topic of conversation. And I really appreciate all of you people coming out to hear about the trials and travails of being a comic book retailer, because I didn't know what to expect if we were going to have 3 people or more. So I'm really glad to have everybody come up. I'm Brian Hibbs. I own Comics Experience in San Francisco. I opened up in 1989. I've been in that same location the whole entire time. I have not moved 1 foot from that location. That I think puts me in rare company among my peers in general. And other than that, I want to have everybody just introduce themselves so I don't mess up like their store name or the city and things like that. So why don't, Richard, you start on that end.
I'm Richard Evans from Houston, Texas. I've got Bedrock City Comic Company, and we've been around since 1990, and we've got 6 stores in Houston and I think retail is better now than it's ever been.
We disagree a lot.
I'm Gerald Hogan. I own Trilogy Comics in Virginia Beach in Norfolk, Virginia. We opened in May of 1981 and we currently have 2 stores. We peaked at 5 in the mid-90s.
I'm Shelton Drum. I own Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and the Heroes Convention, I guess. I opened my first store here in Charlotte in 1980, actually in January of 80. And by 83, I had 3 stores, and by 94, I had 6 stores. And by 97, I had 1 store. As Brian was alluding to, the Heroes World defection from the industry kind of predicated that. It's just too hard to do it in the mid-90s. But, you know, we've grown back. So it's a good market right now, and that's who I am.
My name is Kyle Puttkammer, and I opened in 1991 with very little, and very quickly realized that I can support a family off of this, and felt very blessed to be able to do so. And the years have gone by so quickly, it feels like, but I can tell you that every day is an adventure, and every day I try and find new challenges. And so my store specifically, I was going to be happy with 1 store. Thought I had maybe 10 years in this business before the whole market changed. And the second store opened up, and it continues to surprise me. The opportunities continue to surprise me. This past year we had 10,000 people out for free comic book day. And from what I can tell, I believe that's the nation's largest. We've partnered with the city, and we've partnered with a lot of key people in the community. And business continues to be something we just try to keep up with. The comic book industry has many challenges, but I think we can bring the next generation of comic book readers in, hopefully. And that's our main goal and focus, is the next generation of readers. We've got a great kids section and manga, and we even
You didn't say where you're from.
Gwinnett County, which is just northeast of Atlanta. 2 locations, Lawrenceville and Beaufort in Georgia. Georgia.
Name of the shop?
Say again.
Name of the shop?
Galactic Quest.
Okay.
Galaxy Quest movie came out, and you know that wasn't us, but they treated us good. So, yeah. Thank you.
My name is John Cohen. I own Beyond Comics. I opened my store in '96, but I started working with someone else in 1981 in Gaithersburg, Maryland, Collective World. I'm in Frederick, Maryland right now. And yeah, I've done 1 store, 2 stores, 3 stores, 4, 3, 2, 2. Wants to count. And it says don't open too many stores because it's too much work.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it's because we're all key men in our stores, and we don't scale. That's the hard part sometimes. So I would like to let's start talking about distribution and how distribution has changed over the years. In the 80s, when most of us started, or close to it, there were a lot of distributors. I think there were 20 or so.
At least 15.
Yeah.
3 in Atlanta.
Yeah. And then it went down to 1, and now we're back up to 3. So can we talk about that experience of dealing with multiple distributors? Certainly, I think, back then, all those distributors all were competing for product. And the thing I really remember is wanting to buy a copy of, say, Watchmen or Dark Knight, and you didn't necessarily know who would have it in stock any given week.
I think the big difference was the 15 distributors all carried the same product line.
Yeah.
They all had Marvel Comics, they all had DC Comics, and all the independents. So if your main distributor was out of something, you could call the next guy you like, or just deal with multiple people all the time anyway. But now, they're exclusives, so you can't get day,
and stuff,
for sure.
yeah. So, you know,
Also, your distributors back in the day used to inventory the product and they had to order it themselves. So they were handling their own overages. So they ordered an extra 1,000, 2,000 copies to see what they could sell. And then eventually it became more print on demand. They weren't ordering extras because they didn't want to carry the inventory. So that's
another big change, at least to me, when we first opened, we had, Capital had a warehouse in Houston. Within a year, Diamond opened a warehouse in Houston, and there was the remnants of Longhorn distribution, which was closed. So we could drive from warehouse to warehouse and pick stuff up. And, you know, it was super simple if you were out of stuff to you know, until death of Superman or whatever. But, you know, you could just kind of go shop around and pick stuff up in person.
Yeah.
Speaking of death of Superman, that's when I really used the ID in town. You know, you knew they were coming out next week with the ID. Go pick up a couple extra cases and still be on track because you couldn't get enough from any of the distributors.
Yep. Yeah, in the Bay Area, we had, well, at one point we had Bud and Diamond and Capital all there. And again, as you said, you would go and pick books. But the thing I really remember about that time is they used to have their own shelving units where they put the new comics up. So we were shopping the books just like our customers would.
Right.
And we would know, that cover's really good. I'll take an extra 20 copies of it just because.
Because you're seeing it right there.
Because you're seeing it, right? And you're like, oh, someone will buy that I hadn't actually thought would buy that. And that's gone now. We can't even necessarily get the right cover on the electronic systems that PRH or Lunar uses.
If you don't mind me kind of veering to another part of the conversation that we were talking about, but, you know, we talk about warehouses back then and the choice that we had. And one of the big complaints that everybody in retail makes about the situation now is that we don't have the choice through distributors. But the fact is, we've got more choice for distributors than we've ever had before. I mean, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Bedrock was ordering from probably 15 different vendors, including Diamond and whatever. And we've got over 300 vendors that we've got that are shipping to us regularly. Now it's toys and manga and cards and everything else, but there's choice all the way across the board and all of that stuff. And so my problem with retail now isn't that the retail is bad, it's that we have problems getting people to come into our stores. That's the big problem right now, is that the publishers aren't putting out product that is drawing people into our stores. And so we say that retail is down, but the mechanics of retail are not down right now. They're easier than ever before, but we are having a harder time than ever getting people to come into our shops. And so it's become like your deal with Free Comic Book Day, super commendable, but what we've become is event merchandisers. We event, you know, getting creators in the store, doing things to get customer interaction, book readings, book club stuff. All of us do these things, and that's what we are as retailers now. And that's what we have to get better at, to get people into the shops.
I think one of the things that we've really had the amazing advantage of is, I presume you guys have your Wednesday crowds.
Sure.
Now, one of my stores doesn't have a great Wednesday crowd. The other, you know, you can't get at the counter sometimes. And I think for every store out there, they're going to have a different experience. But the concept of having that reliable, built-in, every Wednesday consumer is something that a lot
I'm
of...
back to Wednesday now with DC doing
What's
their
that?
thing.
Yeah, well-
Because if we had those Tuesday and Wednesdays, then now DC's going back to Wednesday.
But I also look at the retail merchants that are on the square, and they don't have the kind of traffic flow that my store does, because they don't have that reliable product that comes in on a day, or conditioned customers that I have to have every issue, even though, like you said, Brian, they're rebooting constantly. It's like they can't get past 3-6 issues.
Yeah, well, this is part of what I was going to say to Richard's first point, was that I don't think it's necessarily that the customers are abandoning us. I think it's that the publishers have actively pushed the customers away by the way that they're publishing.
Yeah.
Line expansions, too many SKUs on the same book, way too many variant covers. marketing based on fear of missing out rather than on this is a great story, you're gonna want it. And I find those things particularly problematic.
And editorially, there's just nothing that's, well, I don't want to say nothing, but there are very few things that are grabbing the public's attention like there have been at different times in the past. I mean, you know, I would love to have another thing like Walking Dead that that grabs the general public's attention and brings them into the store. And it's been a long time, or even, you know, DC 52, you know, something like that.
I think Energon, the G.I. Joe Transformers stuff has been working really well. And it's been bringing a lot of lapsed people.
And I think Robert Kirkman really has the concept of what makes comics special, that surprise.
Yeah.
That, you know, when he canceled Walking Dead, it was like, what are you doing? But it makes sense because, you know, he did have bigger things on the horizon. It took him a little while to get there, but this summer is definitely Transformers and G.I. Joe and everything there. It's moving the needle. And we need more publishers and creators that understand that and focus on that. And he keeps everything in print. It's very, when people walk in the door, they do want to buy something. They just don't know where to start or how to continue to do it. And they get derailed when something's delayed or it's out of stock.
Bought it 2 out of 14, you can't get.
Yeah, and Kirkman keeps it all in print. And I think that's part of his winning strategy. We need more people that have that winning strategy.
Brian, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Out of everybody up here, you don't do as much in back issues as he does.
I barely do that much at all, yeah.
I think all of us would agree that the post-COVID year and a half or 2 years was a back issue driven time that really funded retail to a great degree. How did you deal with that?
I mean, you know, we started mail order for the first time ever. You know, and yeah, I mean, trying to sell books that way. It was hard. Those were hard years, you know. But I don't think that us being in back issues with the way the back issue market is in San Francisco would have been that big of an upturn.
I think just about anybody that carried any depth of back issues saw numbers that they never had seen.
We
never had seen.
We crushed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't imagine an environment where I couldn't keep stuff in the showcase and I was selling like 4 or 5 times retail.
And now we're buying it back at 10%.
Exactly.
But you know, if our prices are adjusted accordingly, it's still moving. And because the people do, yes, people got burned. And I remember very specifically in the 90s telling people, don't buy Valiant because of an investment. Don't buy Image because of an investment. But that changed around 2008 for me when I did see legitimately, okay, yeah, I can't argue. I mean, I can't think of any other industry where you can take a dime and turn it into $6 million.
Sure.
I can't think of an industry that can do that. Only comics.
Yeah.
Only
I think the perhaps the biggest thing that's different between my store and your store and your store and your store. I'm not quite sure about these two, the size of the store, but we're in 1,200 square feet.
Yeah.
And that's it. We're never getting any bigger. I mean, that's the size of the store. Every other store in San Francisco is around the same size.
I've told you this before, but one of the biggest epiphanies I had in retail, when I first opened in 90, I came at this as a collector and a back issue guy, and I love Golden Age comics and all that stuff, and that's the reason I opened my store. But when I first opened, I also was selling sports cards and stuff to help pay the bills, and it was a bigger 50/50 card and comic shop. And I went out to WonderCon one year and went to Rory's store and saw his shop and how he had in Comic Relief everything that was related to comics, tattoo magazines and graphic novels and European editions and everything that was related to comics, and his store was busy as heck. And it's just, this is what I love. I don't care about sports cards. I don't care about, that's what I love. And I went back and I took all the cards out and sold them to another card shop and just made us a comic book store. And, you know, everything that we do since then, and that was probably late '92. Everything we've done since then has been to keep the doors open to sell comics. It's all about selling comics, because I still love the back issues. The back issues are the thing for me. And so those last 2 years, 2020, 2021, 2022, it was amazing, because it reminded me percentage-wise of those days in the, in the 70s and whatnot, when I was working in other people's comic shops, where, it was all about selling back issues. That when we opened our stores, I think when our initial numbers were probably 50% back issues and 50% new comics. And during the early 2000s, it was probably 80% new issues and 10% back issues. And so
Most of us who opened in the 80s, especially the early 80s, we were back issue stores.
yeah.
Well, we had to be. I mean, what else was there? I mean, there was,
I had a small new comic rack behind the counter, but I didn't want to buy cameras and do stuff, and they wouldn't have been in. All the back issues
Well,
was out front.
I remember working at Camelot. So I started working at a comic store in '78, and we were ordering from Longhorn then, and our whole math of ordering new comics was, we're going to order a bundle. You had to order them in bundles of 50. They come string bundle. We'd order a bundle, and 10 copies would go out for sale, and 40 copies would go in the back, so that we could mark them up as back issues and sell them over the next year. Now, I mean, I remember early, probably around Superman, one of your columns in Tilting the Windmills talking about, you can't hold stuff, the math of it doesn't make sense. But that's the way we used to do comics.
it is the way we used to do it, but the math changed.
Exactly.
Because not only did the customer base change, but the form factor of comics changed. Look, when I opened my store in '89, the whole middle of the store was nothing but packages on tables. I think that there were no more than 20 graphic novels that were actually in print. And when I mean in print, the publisher would go back to press ones, like once you sold out. Probably not even 20. And so even then I thought, I want to be a bookstore someday, there wasn't the stock to support that.
So you had to order them to hold them.
Yeah, exactly. So back then it would make sense that, if someone wants to read Watchmen, well, they've got to buy Watchmen 1 through 12. It's the only way. But now you can just buy Watchmen. Nobody wants to buy Watchmen #1 anymore. I mean, I'm sure it's got some level of collector's value just cause, but it's not a hot book anymore. It's not something that. Whereas I still sell the Watchmen trade every single week, 2 or 3 copies without a fail. So
Actually, the back issues went through a little period with the HBO series.
okay.
Yeah, the back issues are, it's a stock market. It goes up, it goes down.
Sure.
And you have to be comfortable with it going down at times.
Which is great if you have a warehouse that you have space to store all these things, but many stores don't.
Yeah, the 1,200 square feet, I had a location next to a Publix that was just exactly as you described. And yes, there was that challenge. And we did card gaming at the time and such, but definitely there are restrictions. To be in the same location for all those years is very commendable. But at the same time, exploring options. This past week, we had a ton of movie posters from the '80s come in. So I'm now learning about movie posters because, yes, comics are my priority. Always have been, always will be. But I'm open to learning new stuff too. I want to be entertained myself. And so when something new comes along, Pokemon turns out was not a fad.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fad, not so much.
This is my theory of life. I opened up my comic shop 4 doors down from GameScape, which had opened up 18 months before me. It's the best game store in San Francisco. I did this very specifically because at that time, every single comic shop carried games too. That's where you got your D&D books, was from the comic shop.
Right.
In fact, standalone game stores were relatively rare.
Yes.
But I didn't want to do one thing not great. I would rather pick one thing and do it as good as I possibly can than to do 2 things half-assed. That's been my philosophy on retailing all along. And
Are you still working on it?
I'm still working. Of course, I'm still working on it every day. Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I try to be the best graphic novel store that I can be. And what's funny? You mentioned Rory. I still feel like I'm not as good of a store that Rory was, because Rory would getting European books and things like that, that I'm like, I don't want to sell this book for $60. That's ridiculous.
You know, in hindsight, who knows about the economics of his store? And obviously there's some, but he was just such a cool guy,
Yeah.
and the store was so cool that in my brain it's reached mythical proportions.
He
You know,
could
it
sell
always
that.
will.
He sure could.
Yeah.
He sure
He
could.
was a treat. I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Me too. Me too. He was my best friend.
In the late seventies and early eighties, you could afford to put a case of Burn X-Men back or
Mhm.
Miller Daredevil or Simonson store.
There's a shop in Houston that's been around, I think he's been around since '76 or '77. He's an interesting old coot. And we did a deal, a joke thing about 20 years ago where we set up at a show in Dallas with nothing but ROM, a whole booth that was just nothing but ROM. And it was, without getting into the back reason for it, it was just something we did to amuse ourselves. But this guy who has this other store has he probably had 20 long boxes of ROM comics that he had, and even now he'll never sell them. But when I was doing this project, I kept trying to buy those ROMs from him, and he wouldn't sell them to me. It still makes me giggle. But anyhow, I think he still orders in that.
$5 a lot.
Not so much, but he's been around so long. He owns his building, and he bought it way back in the day. And through the luck of the draw, his building is half a block over from Joel Osteen's church. So the property value on that building is ridiculous. And so, he doesn't really need to do anything to, he'll be able to retire with a lot of money.
Yeah, that was the smartest move I ever made, was buying my building after 6 moves.
Yeah.
There you go.
7th move was the last one.
Yeah, I was never that smart. I just got a bunch of leases.
I think Brian and I don't have that luxury where we're at.
Not really.
A couple $1 million for a hovel.
Exactly, yeah. And I've been really fortunate to have a landlord who, I'm month to month, and I have been since year 3. 32 years of month to month, and I almost never get my rent increased. I mean, they're great about it. To go back to the thing you just mentioned, Sheldon, the bit about you could buy an extra case of X amount. I remember us doing that when I was working at the Bear Bomb store before I opened my own store. And I think the difference is that the comics then were 50 cents, maybe 75 cents,
Maybe 40 cents.
maybe 40 cents, and you could sell that back issue for $1, right? And so the profit margin in stocking back issues and keeping just stuff that you were just churning,
Sure.
right? Like made a lot of sense. Today,
Especially with the shows.
Yes.
We made a lot of money at comic shows.
Yeah.
Just by having all the next
Along those lines, obviously, every city back in the day had a comic book store that ran a show. And for the most part.
We actually didn't.
You did? Okay, but a lot of.
Houston did not. There were some great shows that were run by fans in the '70s. They stopped in 1980, and after that, there were no shows run by any shops for the longest time until last year.
Atlanta had Titans, which had 5 locations, and they ended up focusing only on Dragon Con and some of the other locations. I'm just curious as to a topic, since you're an expert, the show has served the community well. Can you speak on that as far as your experience there? Because obviously that's been, there's different kinds of stores that are known for different things. Your claim to fame is definitely, your legacy is here, and that's something.
tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
Because I was doing mini cons because I didn't want to do flea markets anymore. And that grew into a store, and a couple of years later, it's like, well, we ought to do something bigger than a mini con. And really it was just to give something back to the customers and a way for me to meet the creators I wanted to meet and for the customers to meet them. And it just grew organically into what it is now. It's still a promotion for the store, really, is what it started as. I think it still is.
Big difference from the hotel days back in the 80s.
You know, you gotta grow organically or
show feeds the store?
Well, yeah, we get people from out of town, you know, they know about us now, they pass it through, but, our local customer base is still kind of the same customer that is always been. Some kids grow into collectors, but, it's hard to get new regulars in on this days. We see the same ones. And we're proud of it, you know, we're happy to see it.
Agreed.
Yeah. But most of the shows that we used to go to were not by stores, I don't think, Kyle. I think they were companies who ran shows or, like you say, vendors, you know.
It's been an interesting thing to observe. I've gotten a chance, without, you know, heaping too much praise. I've gotten a chance to go to a lot of shows, and this is focused on the artists, this is focused on the storytelling, and this is where a lot of people, including me, in my creative efforts, got their start. And,
Again, it's kind of selfish, because that's what I like and what I want to do, and I'm going to meet these people. And they had a good time, they told their friends and their, you know, associates, and more people come.
you saw a need and you met it, and that's why it was
So the pendulum swings all around, and what it's become is, between your show and Mark's show, y'all are the two shows that are not corporate, your comic fan-based, comic creator-based comic book shows.
Which is Mark's show?
What's
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Yeah, that's another one.
And so all the comic collectors talk about those two shows, because there's so many comics here, and all the, you know, fans of art talk about your show because of the lineup that you have, which is incredible. And we love it. I've had a killer day today, so I'm gonna go shut the stores down and just do shows.
Yeah. I'm a newbie. This is my first HeroesCon, and I am so impressed with this place. I am so impressed with the mood. It's like being at a family reunion.
Yes.
And like none of the family that you don't like is here. Yeah.
You know, you talked about, for your customers, what this show does for you, and what we've noticed with our show, just after 1 year, is you know, we work so hard to get customer engagement, to get customers to at least think about us on a regular basis. It's not even coming in the shop. And having a show like this just mentally engages your customer and creates an amount of loyalty that nothing else can do. It really does. I mean, everybody that walks through the door here that's from here, just mentally, subconsciously is thanking you for doing what you do. And
We've got a lot of action things. I mean, I can't walk through the hall without it being stopped.
We've got a great staff. Carl is wonderful, everybody, and the show is just
I'm
awesome.
lucky, man.
So,
That's right.
and you know, I've never been in your store, so I need to do that sometime. Yeah, I need to.
I took pictures last time I was there and changed some stuff in my store. I redid my whole graphic novel display.
And I think as the years add on, which is crazy to think and incredible to think, because I still feel like a kid inside. I don't know about you guys, but the reason why we do this is because we do love it. And I think the market kind of, during the hard times, takes advantage of that perhaps. But we do love what we do. And
We're a stubborn bunch.
we're a stubborn bunch.
With cockroaches of retail.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's just, it's a good industry to be in. It really is.
It has its ups and downs, but it's a whole lot of fun always. I mean, you know, even when sales are down, and frankly, right now, sales are down.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that for the most part, sales are down somewhat. And, even then, it's still, it's not any kind of despair or anything. It's just, let's see what we can do to make it better.
Even though sales are down, even though it's not best times, I would venture to say that you probably get some people that come in the store and say, man, I'm thinking about, I thought about, I wanted to, my dream has always been, and here we are. And it's a,
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's I think, economically a lot harder today than it has been in a while. And I think, why, you know, when you said we're better off with all these choices and all these distributors, I agree with that as a broad statement. But when it gets to the specifics of periodical comics, the math doesn't work anymore. The extra work that we're doing to source things from each of the exclusive distributors for things, I think takes away all the problem.
Well, I, in a sense, agree with you, but I think it's all in how you approach it from a retail standpoint and what your focus is on. You can focus on the tasks that are involved in putting books on the stands, or you can focus on the involvement of getting customers in to buy those things off the stands, and they're two completely different arguments. And I realize it's a little bit of an economy of scale, but for us, having the multiple stores and being able to get everything shipped to one store and break it down and ship it out to the other stores, there's work involved. But the dollar for us, we're making so much more on every dollar spent now than we ever have.
Okay.
And so I understand the limitations of being a single store owner and having to deal with that in one shop versus maybe a chain and the discount things. And those are all definitely arguments or discussions that need to be had with the publishers, for sure. But in the grand scheme of things, all the things that are available to us as retailers are things that we've been fighting for 30 years, and they are available to us now. You know, we do have sales reps. We never had them before. We do have people that we can call and bitch at when they screw things up, where we didn't have, other than, you know, we might have had a personal relationship with one of the 15 distributors, but I have sales reps that will come in the store and take orders from me now. I didn't have that, and I want to have the argument from here where publishers are paying me for the shelf space in my store, just like they do in a supermarket. And I feel like there are people that I'm starting to be able to have that conversation with and didn't have that.
Yeah.
So it is moving forward. I still firmly believe that the big problem right now is that there isn't anything editorially that is firing up the general public to get them into shops. And that's the crux of our problem right now. There's just nothing that's getting people fired up. And so it's incumbent on us to create those things because the publishers aren't going to do it.
Sure.
So I'm set up in Artist Alley. And as a retailer, I see what's missing. And in a very, very small way, I've taken a stab at trying to bring that to market. And I do think that innovative storytelling and such, it seems like every artist wants to draw the dark and gritty and all the rest of it. But of course, Dogman is the #1 seller. It's a huge percentage of the market, and we sell a ton of them. So that connection between
How many comic stores do you think do them?
10%.
You know, it's a small amount.
It is,
That's
it is.
that's
It's
the
always,
shame.
it's always been 10%.
Sure,
I
I know.
mean, even when we were talking 20 years ago about the good stores, it was 10% of the stores are good, and the other 90% are mediocre.
Having said that, the stores that I've been in are much more professional than back in the 90s. They really have their act together in a lot of ways, more than back in the 90s. My wife was an outside observer, and she's seen just stand out, just amazing stores. And
Back in the 90s, we didn't have cash registers, most stores.
Right.
Like 90% of the stores didn't have cash
but the
registers.
mentality
Until Carol Kalish
the
got us all to have cash registers.
The mentality still exists.
Yeah.
Diamond still sends out a retailer form for us to fill out and hand in our orders physically retail. You know, those, who thinks like that? I go into
But someone still does though, because they keep publishing.
And the fax.
They still get faxes.
They still get faxes.
Yep, which is, X percentage of their customers are just not gonna change.
What we have to realize is all of these stores are different.
Yeah.
All thousands of stores in the country all focus on something different.
talking about the difference regionally too, you know, real estate's cheap in Houston. You know, my main store is 8,400 square feet. It's big, and, you know, like, we can afford to put a lot of stuff in there, and so it makes it a lot easier. And, yeah, I think about the things that you have to deal with, and, you know, employee issues and all that kind of different stuff. It's totally different.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I can't, I actually know what I would do. 8,500 square feet, I would have all the craft apples be full cover. Instead of everything is spine out. I literally cannot, everything has to be spine out because there ain't no room to do anything else, you know? And we've gotten to the point now where as new graphic novels come in, we've got to go, well, this one's got to go.
Yeah.
You know, there ain't room at the house anymore, you know?
Yeah, well, and, you know, and that's another thing too, like that issue right there with retail now. You know,
When you decide.
technology has allowed us to be able to control our inventory to a degree that we never were able to before. So we can go run reports and see what's sold and what have, that graphic novel, I haven't sold one in, you know, 13 months.
Yep.
Don't ever reorder it again, you know? That one we're selling, you know, 20 of them a month or, you know, whatever. Well, we gotta, you know, and we have, you know, having the ability to do those kind of things. I mean, you know, it's so easy to do that now, and so retail is better now than it ever was.
Yeah, no, I mean, on that part I'll agree with. I just, as I say, the mechanical parts of the job, I feel like working with 3 periodical distributors is murderous.
Yeah.
And it's murderous for the average small store. All the stores that I know that are going out, when I talk to them, they pretty much say, either it's the landlord is fuck them over, or it's that they just can't keep up the work on the periodical, and the periodicals aren't making enough money anymore for them to spend that time doing it.
It's interesting on like the book publishers. So when Diamond, this is all the technical stuff that you guys will get bored by probably, but you know when the switch over from Diamond to all the different stuff and having things go to, you know, Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster and stuff, in a very small scale, it allowed us to get a free-floating $100,000 loan.
Sure.
Because we went from being essentially no credit with Diamond, or 7 days, and then it's no credit with Diamond. Yeah.
That was a full 30.
Congrats, you'll never get it again.
Right.
You'll never get
Well,
it again.
I don't need to get it.
And I'll tell you a story, but anyway. So it's one of the reasons why I'm very, very happy about the split up of Diamond. But anyway, we went from being 7 days to now with Simon & Schuster, or with Penguin Random House.
60 days.
I get 30 days. I could go further, but I get 30 days and I get a better discount. And so that flowed over those weeks just on Marvel product. I mean, between all of our stores, that's $100,000 that we're able to flow down. That's awesome. It's great. You know, I write one big ass check rather than a weekly, you know, check. And then you compound that by the other book distributors and what, because let's face it, it may be more work to deal with the book distributors, but they are 10,000 times more professional.
Yep.
They are infinitely more professional.
I think when it comes to packing and shipping, they're not. I think they're
Even that, they've been reactive to the point where they have taken care of all the problems that we had. We have not had many issues. Now, there are, some of them will ship out small things in small increments from time to time, but they don't charge me shipping.
Sure.
So I don't care, you know? And Diamond would be eating my lunch on shipping.
But again, as a small store, I do care when I get 18 boxes instead of a consolidated 3 boxes, right? Because I've got to do something with all those boxes and all that cardboard and all that, the paper that gets generated. You know, you're going to say I'm petty, but my recycling bin doesn't hold that much stuff genuinely a hassle for us to
Brian,
deal with.
I would
these
never
boxes
say you
that-
were petty. My thinking, but I've never said that.
Well, one of the things, obviously, we're all full-time. This is all we do. This is our focus. And the shift of being able to sit down once a month, filling up the diamond catalog, and being done with it. And now having to order constantly 2-3 times a week from all these different distributors. It has changed and it has shifted.
Order from every Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, every Monday.
It's definitely a challenge, but we are all doing it full-time, and we are fully committed. I'm curious as to how many of these stores that we hear about that are going out of business, where they have a full-time job or a part-time job, or they aren't fully in it.
No, I think most of them are fully in it. Absolutely, most of them are.
Okay.
Not all of them.
Yeah, I'm
but
curious.
most of them are, you know.
But I do think that some of them, and probably a fair majority of them that are gone out of business, were looking for an escape route, and that has been their reason for.
Yeah, but I don't think
justification.
I don't think they would have actually chosen that route.
Yeah.
And there are still people, I know several retailers, I don't want to name people's names, right? But I know several people who are young still, have got another 20 years left in them, but they can't make it work anymore because of that hassle of the day-to-day thing. I mean, look, even while I'm here, I've got to do FOC this weekend.
Sure.
You know, I'm on vacation.
Yeah,
I had to calculate, okay, how am I going to be able to get FOC done while I'm on a vacation during my birthday week?
That's the other big change in retail in 35 years, is that I've really learned how to delegate authority.
Right.
So, if people doing it while I get to play.
That's a
sell
difficult
it,
thing to
sell
let
it.
go of control. It's difficult to let go of that control.
Yeah.
And again, it's the difference between one store and multiple stores, you know, you have
No,
someone else you can delegate it to. you know.
1,000%.
Yeah.
You're
I mean, yes,
absolutely
I can
right.
have someone else do it that 1 week a year, but the other 51 weeks, I'm doing it because it's, you know, at the end of the day, I'm the one writing the check, you know. It's all good.
A store does get to the point where, and, you know, there's so many different ways of thinking, but I said, with, it's just the mile high business model, you know, that works there. That works fine there. It's not gonna work, you know, a lot of other places.
Right.
You know, the coffee shop, with books, that's gonna work someplace. There's no consistent, because we're all so, we might as well be a multi-dimensional, you know, multi-universe thing, because each of our yeah. It really is different experiences that we all have, and we all bring different skills as well. And time has taught us a lot of things, and sometimes the time has conditioned us to one way of thinking, and it serves us very well. And then another time it'll hold us back. You can never always tell.
Well, I mean, this is something that I will say, I think makes us better than we were 35 years ago, that we actually have a functioning trade organization that
Yeah.
throws a hell of a goddamn meeting every year.
Yeah.
And gets all the people in the room and has us learn from one another. There is not a time I don't go to Comics Pro and don't walk out of there with 7 new ideas at least, and knowing that I've inspired 7 new ideas and 70 other people. And that is something that we never had before.
Right.
The various trading groups were very closed, and they were cartel-like, and I much prefer what we have today.
Comics Pro was the first time I was able to have dinner with folks and really see my colleagues and be proud of all of their achievements. And nationally know that there's people like, oh, I got to step up my game. They're crushing it. They're doing a great job of it. You know,
Certainly good ideas.
definitely.
It's funny how many people in those cartel-like organizations are not in retail anymore.
Oh, sure.
You know, like a big chunk of the DLG people, there's none of, you know, I try to think, you know, there's just.
Might be the only one left.
You and me.
I was gonna say, how many of them actually still run stores?
I do.
But they're not that many. They've been,
You know, more than
but
I
they were the old school guys, so they were the ones, you know.
Dogs is gone.
Yep.
Hanley's gone.
Long story, pretty much gone.
Comic Relief.
Is that Comic Relief?
Well, Golden Apple's still there.
Golden Apple, there was another LA store.
Heidi Ho? Years ago.
I think that.
But again, it was closed membership, and it's, you know.
Yeah.
Do you think it's harder to open up a comic book store today than it was
Yes.
in 20, 30?
Yes.
And
Harder in what way?
I built a little lean-to shelf to put my back issues on.
I think it costs more money though.
Well, that's what, that's where I would
Pretty
put
easy
harder
to-
for most first-time business people, is that you now would need $150,000 to.
In a way, I think that's a good thing for our industry. It seems like, I think back to the early days of comics retail, and so many people were opening stores that were doing it simply because they didn't want to go get a job. and so there was just the level of professionalism the bar was very low. And the cost of entry now into comic retailing is such that people that are going to do it are going to be really literally and figuratively invested in it. And so they're going to treat it differently than shops back then. I mean, look, we talk about Mile High. The story that just blows my mind. He's got his little shop in there, and his rent was, $200 or $300 a month. He bought that Mile High collection, and he paid $2,000 for it. 10 cents a book, 20,000 books, $2,000, and he had to call a guy from Houston to get a loan for $2,000 to buy that collection. So, the idea of, let's say whatever, but having to call for a loan for something that's maybe 3 or 4 times my rent now, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's just weird. But that's what it was. And, guys were running stores that were running them out of their station wagons.
My first monthly rent was $75.
Yeah.
The rental agent said, yeah, you can rent it, but it's going up from what it was. I knew it was $50 before. $75.
250 for me. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the
That was
things
square
that
footage,
instilled
200.
something in me, the very first store that I worked in was a shop called Camelot, and it was in Houston. It was run by a lawyer and Bruce Hamilton and Russ Cochran. They were the 3 investors in the store. So everything that was done in that store was done pretty first rate at that time for a comic shop. And I was 14, 15 years old when I started working there, so to me that was the way it was supposed to be done. So when I went to open the store, I kind of tried to emulate that. But you'd go around to shops, and like you said, people would have a shoebox that they were taking money in, and they'd have comics just laid out on a wooden table or whatever and stuff. And so it was,
Had to protect it, didn't I?
yeah. But you go every once in a while, you find something in there. You go, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Little Superman and great shit.
I think the potential peril is that you're right, you get more professional people if you increase the investment needed. But how long is it going to take to repay that investment now at this point,
Yeah.
I think, I think I would not try to open another store in San Francisco with less than $150,000.
Right.
And I've advised several people who have invested that amount of money, and I don't know when they're going to get that back, though. It may take them 25 years to get that investment back.
Well, that level of investment is going to be a lot in San Francisco. It's going to be a lot in, rural North Carolina too. So, the other thing that we risk is, as an industry, losing shops in underserved areas, and so not having, the product that we love in front of people's eyeballs in a lot of parts of the country. So that's the other thing too. So everything kind of works together. But I guess
There's a lot of room for a lot more stores.
Yeah.
A lot more. We could double the number of stores, and I don't think would actually impact any of the existing stores too badly.
No doubt.
Except most of the stores always want to go in near another.
what's that?
So many stores up and
that'll-
down the road from you or
Exactly.
in the same region, but they don't do the smart marketing thing of where would a store make sense. They go, no, I'm gonna do it near my house. That guy's there and that guy's there, but I'm gonna go have a store with my collection, which is unreplaceable, so you sell everything and you can't compete on the new they don't go, oh, well, there's no store within these 3 cities, this would be smart, because you might have to move or commute.
Yeah, the movie commute is perhaps.
We're lazy, you know, comic retailers.
Who's
got a long
easy? I think, so, I mean, my working theory has always been that all of us just wanted to have a clubhouse that we could hang out at.
We're bartenders.
That too could be a bar as well, but I like clubhouse because it's, you know, you don't have to be an alcoholic to be in a clubhouse.
We actually save people from alcoholism.
Yes.
I have a short list of folks that have.
Oh, no, bourbon's become the big thing for sure.
It has been.
And I think among the current and existing stores, I think that because most of our peers have opened not just a comics clubhouse, but very specifically a Marvel comics clubhouse, they let Marvel get away with stuff that shocks me all the time. You know, there's whole swaths of Marvel product that I just refuse to order, even though I'm a dedicated comic shop, because I know it's not healthy and it's not good. And
I'm right with you.
Yeah.
I completely agree. What's the example of that?
Oh, like a lot of the various variant cover kinds of
A lot of
deals.
the order incentive books.
The order incentive books, too many Spider-Man spin-offs. I mean, there are Spider-Man miniseries now that I'm literally going subs +1, and we sell out and we're happy. And could we have sold 3? Could we have sold 5? Yeah, maybe. I don't care. I don't need to chase those pennies because it's not good to have 18 different Spider-Man comics come out in a month. That is bad.
So,
Literally bad.
I presume that you've ordered the 1 in 1,000 Spawn book, the 1 in 1,000?
We ordered 1,000 spawns, and so we got it, but we didn't order 1,000 spawns to get it.
But you sold the 1 in 1,000?
No, we gave it away.
Oh, really? I pre-sold mine for $3,000.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
We gave
I sold-
we gave ours away through our live stream
Yeah.
sale, our Wednesday live
So
sale.
you did benefit because.
Well, it was a promotional thing, but that's what it is. It's a
But he
promotional
didn't
thing,
reach,
so-
so he didn't reach, so he said, I can use this in marketing. You don't sell 1,000 spawns.
I sold enough.
Because,
But,
I mean, I'm not gonna reach, but if I get it naturally and it's a tool, now it's a tool to make people love my business.
That's exactly what we used. We used it as a deal to promote the live stream.
But Rich, I know you probably jazzed about the new EC coming out and the EC.
Yeah, we ordered pretty heavy.
Yeah, those EC 125s are selling for like $150.
They won't be at my store.
Okay.
And it won't be 2 weeks after they come out.
And they won't be, they did go down to 140. They did go down to 140. But I do think that there's money that we're leaving on the table in many instances. And that's everybody's individual prerogative, no doubt.
In relationship to ratio variance?
Yeah.
I disagree, and
Yes.
I'll take a store down the street from
But
you.
you remember the
that
90s,
doesn't-
you remember the 90s gimmicks covers?
Uh-huh.
How they overdid those and people got sick of that
Sure.
stuff.
But they
And it
weren't
was-
variants, that was the only
Yeah.
Right,
copy
right,
of that book.
right. The gimmick era is dead. It kind of came back a little bit, don't know how y'all.
Now it's a gimmick.
Now it's, but the ratio variant scenario, it hit and then it died and then it started coming back again.
But how many of the ratio, if you 1 or 2 that go for more money, don't make it a ratio thing. I have to deal with ratios weekly, and we'll get 400, 500 between the 2 stores. And they're going for a third to a quarter of the ratio value that's established. 1 to $1 is the historical.
Which is way too cheap. by
It
the way.
is. If
Way
you
too
spend
cheap.
$50, $60 to get 1 book, and you're selling for $10, it's a bad ratio.
Yeah.
But if eBay's selling for $10, and I'm not gonna sell it for $10, one that went for $100 still is gonna pay the whole difference. So it is not a trend, it is a speculation on 1 or 2 books
Yeah.
here or there, which is great. If you have it, you made the money, home run, take advantage of it. But 90% of these things, I won't reach for them because we all.
Generally speaking, yes, the Spawn I reached for. The others, I generally don't reach for.
Even
Right,
even
but I'm
stuff
saying
that I
is,
qualify
but they
for,
all fail.
that I natively qualify, I already was buying 25 copies, I just have to buy the 26th
We're gonna be here all
copy,
night, aren't you?
essentially. But so we try to sell those on eBay. I find probably 3/4 of the time they don't even
I don't
get
sell any-
cover price back.
Yeah, I don't sell
They don't
any-
even get cover price.
Well, then, the
So
other
one or two
thing
hits
is-
don't do us any good.
Right, exactly. There's certain books that will for sure pop,
Right.
right? If it's a J. Scott Campbell 1 in 50, sure, that's a good
Did
investment-ish.
you get Judge Campbell's anymore? I thought he just sold his one.
Sure, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
though,
when the
right?
artist starts selling
But
books,
just because it's a
that's
1 in
a problem.
25 or a 1 in 50 does not in
Then
fact mean that
you
it's
can
worth it.
also get more customer return from the idea that they got something for you for $10 that they're going to sell on eBay for $100, than you can selling it to them for $100 and not telling them that they would have been better served spending $100 on a Golden Age book that you've gotten.
Oh, a gold,
So,
you know
so-
Golden Age.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And,
Definitely.
you know, if you,
Yeah.
why would I tell somebody that it's a good investment to spend $3,000 on a spawn incentive when I've got $3,000 worth of books in inventory that have a long track record of holding their value?
Agreed.
And I can use that $3,000 book to make people happy and make the store look better. So in the long run, all of those incentive books are better served not ever being sold, because it's just a manufactured bunch of
It's
bullshit.
manufactured, but here's the thing is that the customer came in and asked me for it. I wouldn't have done it if he wouldn't have come in and asked me for it. And he's like,
Well, you
here's,
said they were gonna
here's
do
it.
it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Kyle, and you know your customer base.
Right.
You know, you cannot tell me that that guy that came in and asked you for that book wasn't looking to get it to flip it.
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
He still has it today.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good.
And
Well,
then-
then that's the guy that you want to
Yeah.
have.
And
He's
I do
gonna
have a
look
lot
at
of,
one day.
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's in the back of his mind.
I think a lot of us have those customers that have a lot of money.
One of the other things about the incentive books that drives me crazy is that the guys that hound me for those books are the same guys that go to Walmart and try and get Pokemon boxes off the trucks, and they clog up my store and don't do me any good. In the long run, they are not going to be there. They're not committed to me. All they are is trying to get that stuff to flip it for a profit so that they can go buy pot or whatever.
And the
You know
reason-
what I mean? It's
I know what you
just,
mean.
it's nothing
I know,
for them.
I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. And here's the thing that is unique about you. Your posts pop up on my feed, I'm like, good job, heck yeah. You know where the value is. You know what's hard to find. You appreciate history. And you're training and teaching your consumers to appreciate and love the value of the history. Whereas, for some reason, you know, I tell them, what are you doing spending this much on this when you could get this for the same amount? But if it makes them happy, it makes them happy, and I can't argue with them, and
Well, I can't argue with that. If it makes them happy, it makes them happy. And if it works for you, that's great. I just have a hard time with the incentives because there is so much downside to them for everything that we do.
I
Well,
agree.
they also crush the parent book a lot of times. You know, especially something like that Spawn 1 in 1,000. There are way too many copies of Spawn 350 on the market, and it's never going to appreciate value
It's
ever.
never good, yeah.
You know,
As we talked about, or at least for me, one of the big problems is editorially, you know, these companies are not doing things to drive customers into our business. And part of it is they're spending so much time lining up artists to do variant covers and doing all that thing and expecting that to be the thing that's going to carry them. And writing stories and getting good art for the interiors and drawing customers in to get to read books over the long haul is not their priority.
Interiors,
And that's, you know,
Interior should always be the priority,
Exactly.
no doubt, yeah. Yeah, interior should always be the priority. And there's so many things I want in this world that I just can't move the needle on. And so,
At risk of,
yeah,
telling artists that I don't wanna see their stuff, I would like to see one cover of the book.
yeah,
But a lot of artists are getting a lot of work out of the variants. And,
Yeah.
and I can't say that out loud, you know? But if there was only one cover on Amazing Spider-Man, and they had a really good publishers have to continue to make money. Whether it's selling one.
What's worse is when the variant cover is better than the main.
You should,
You know, when they do that.
just pick the best cover. Yeah, let them compete for it, I guess. I don't know, but only publish the one.
Yeah.
But also publish covers that reflect what's on the inside of the
What's going on.
comic.
That's
you
the
know?
biggest trend right now, is
They're all posters.
They're all posters.
Because the artists don't know what the stories are about. When they're doing these variant covers, they have no idea what the story
Half of them are convention sketches that have been repurposed.
Yeah,
Happens all the time.
it does.
They just get paid again, you know? I mean, the artists are there to make money too, and I don't fault that, but.
Yeah, this makes our job harder, that's all, you know?
Yeah.
And, yeah. Again, especially for single stores, I just think you have advantage of scale to a certain extent that you can leverage to mitigate some of these harms, but the harms are so much harder. Look, I bought a store that was about to go out of business.
I remember you had 2 stores.
I did for a little while there. When both my employees left at the same time, and I wasn't gonna go back to work for that store, because I wanted to be at my store. So I decided to sell it. I sold the store to the new owners. I spent 8, 12 weeks trying to teach them and train them, like, don't chase variants, don't chase ratio covers. The math just doesn't work. Look, here and here and here, the math doesn't work. What's the first thing they fucking did?
They tried to prove you wrong.
They ordered 100 copies of some stupid fucking comic and 25 copies of another thing, and I'm like, you're not gonna sell them. They didn't sell them. It's a crazy making thing that is doing so much harm, I think. And creating false expectation from the publishers because they think that actually represents real demand. In their head, I'm positive that David Gabriel believes that he is doing nothing but God's work by doing those 1 in 25.
I disagree. I think that they are very well aware that the ultimate customer of theirs is not readers.
Yeah.
It's us.
Sure.
And they
Sure.
know
I
that.
said in his head, though.
And you said earlier, there's 10% of the good stores.
Sure.
And they know that they can sell a lot of that crap to those other 90%. And whether or not they go out of business, they don't care. They obviously didn't care in the 90s.
Sure.
They didn't care.
Sure.
They don't care as long as they can move the units to retailers, whichever retailers they are. And so
I will agree with you broadly, but I will note that the leaked Marvel documents that showed who was buying how many dollars of what and who the largest accounts were made me conclude that it's actually the biggest stores that are funding, that are floating that whole thing. And there it's Midtown, let's say, buying 1,000 copies of everything and getting 12, 1 in 100, or whatever the math is. That's where all that volume is coming from.
Yeah.
So it's not for the most part individual small stores buying in and jumping up their numbers in that particular way. I don't think.
it's all units.
Sure.
Don't keep buying new comics, please.
Yes, please keep buying, please keep buying new comics, definitely. That is,
Or at least just go in the shop and say hi. Go in the shop, go in there and say hi to Sheldon.
we are a fun bunch, I promise.
How many posts you see or talk to people who have always been your customers that say something like, I haven't bought a comic for 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not a customer anymore. They're buying your Gold Age books.
Well,
No.
you know,
They should be.
I think we're getting less and less of that, at least us. We are getting less and less of that Wednesday devoted new comic crowd. But with the other items in the store, at least we're getting eyeballs on new comics. And like I said, everything that I've ever done has been to sell new comics. And I've always said, if I've got to sell milk or, ladies' shoes or, dog food or whatever, to sell new comics, I'll get it in there because I want people to see new comics. And so, we're selling a whole lot of manga and a lot of Japanese toys and stuff these days. That market is kind of crazy for us. And I'm happy to have those folks come in because at least I'll be able to show them some new comics. So they did pick up stuff.
But you know, manga is in comics.
It is, no, it is, but I'm talking about
They
even
just,
more.
they just happen to be 150 pages long.
Right.
But those are periodical comics through and through.
Absolutely.
But here's the.
And they sell it in patterned periodical comics as well. It's a really interesting thing.
Here's
Almost printed.
something that's near and dear to our hearts, which is the artists and the creators. The challenge with the manga comics is how many manga guests are here. And we can't really bring, it's just, there's a disconnect. So,
It's very expensive.
yeah.
Well, it's not just that, but also mangaka for the most part don't ever do personal appearances.
Right.
A huge number of them won't even show their faces
Yeah.
because they're afraid of being hounded in the streets
Correct.
of Japan.
Of course.
It's a totally different thing here. I have yet to be able to get a manga artist to do a graphic novel club, even though we're buying a substantial number of books, and people understand that the interview would be helpful. You know, people at the publisher level understand that that would be extraordinarily helpful, but they can't get they can't convince the creators to do it at all.
And you touched on the challenge of the artists making a living.
Yeah.
And that's a big challenge because we had that wave in the 90s of all those aspiring people that wanted to be Jim Lee.
All those Jim Lees.
You know, Todd McFarlane, they wanted to be those guys. And the only thing that's really moved the needle recently in new comics, and I certainly hope that all of us experience this, was Ultimate Comics Spider-Man #1. It brought so many new subscribers.
Sure.
And
Sure.
we need more of that. And the only way to get there, I think, really is that homegrown, long-term.
Sure.
We're losing our legacy people. And the passing of so many greats.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever replace those greats that.
There's always new greats.
Good new artists.
There's fantastic artists out there.
Fantastic artists.
Yeah.
But the market penetration, the name recognition, the ability to retain that talent.
That's not a thing that can be created, that's a thing that the market creates for itself, I think. I don't think you can externally go, this guy's the hot new thing, it'll never work.
Right.
The audience has to go, holy shit, I like this guy, you know?
Anymore.
And why not here?
Anymore.
The people you talk about, you wish were making comics, are getting paid about all this to see what they were worth to make those comics. So
And
they're gonna
that's
go
another
make
side of the
comics.
economics of it. The guys that do the variant covers get paid more to do those than they do to do the interior.
Well, and
When they can do their own title, yeah, it's great, it's good, but it doesn't have the recognition of Spider-Man or Batman. We can't sell as many, you know, their own book.
We were talking the other panel about graphic novels and how all the young cartoonists coming out of SCAD and all the various programs, you know, we're graduating 100 new comics people every year,
Right.
at least, and they're all pretty much walking out of school with a book contract, but a lot of them haven't quite figured out how long it's going to take them to make that book, and that at the end of the day they end up not making much more than minimum wage. And a lot of them never pay back their advances. And so they'll never get a second contract because the publisher's just not gonna bring them back on. I know of established creators who can't get book contracts now because they put out something that failed once. And now no one will ever give them an advance that they can live on anymore. It's a real problem. It's a real problem that we have destroyed the ecosystem of periodical to paperback to hardcover to limited hardcover, like the whole triangle that we used to have back in the day. Things that made guys like Dave Sims filthy freaking rich, you know? Because you do the work once and then you get paid for it over and over and over again. Jeff Smith makes money off of Bone #1 every single year without fail. And we're in Terry Moore. We're losing a lot of those opportunities though because he did. No, absolutely. But we're losing a lot of those opportunities because the new generation of creators don't understand what's in it for them for periodicals.
One of you talked about, I think, was it J. Scott Campbell, Danger Girl, and Battle Chasers? Those two titles sold great when they were coming out, but both of those creators stopped doing those books because they were getting paid more by gaming magazines to do the covers.
Yep.
And you know, that was you're right, they kind of lost sight of the long term. I think if Danger Girl had been continually coming out and trades of that were coming out on a regular basis, that'd be one of the great sellers. It'd be a perpetual evergreen trade. It's not great, but it's intellectually anything deep, but it'd be a continual seller.
And self-improved, I mean, we
Yeah.
sell more Spawn than we ever did.
Spawn is, yeah, and McFarland did it correctly. I mean, that's,
So one of the, since we've got a lineup of history here, one of the biggest changes I've seen in the industry is in the 90s, comic books were a boys' club, period. It was pretty much the only people that were coming to my stores were boys. Their dads and their sons. So I will say that a positive change has been that we do have a vast
Yes.
array and a long line of female comic book buyers. What would you guys say you've seen that has changed since you've been open that has surprised you perhaps?
Well, not, I mean, that didn't surprise me, right? It was inevitable. But women buy more books generally. Of course, women would buy comics if you put them in places that they wanted to buy them and you gave them comics that they wanted to buy. The problem is, and I was just at Trina Robbins' memorial in San Francisco, and there were a number of the original people who founded Friends of Lulu, and they were all talking about their experiences where they walked into a comic shop and the comic shop was outright hostile to them as girls. They were there, I have money, I want to buy this, and the comic shop's here, and girl.
It's like Pretty Woman.
Fuck off, you know? Right, like, and so, once that changed, then that was inevitable that women would be buying more and more and more comics. I think women will be the majority buyer of comics soon, if they're not already, in terms of graphic novels at least. The thing I would say that has changed that, I don't know, surprise again is the right word, but it used to be that every educator and librarian, not every, but most of them were very, very down on comics. Comics got in the way of reading.
Good call.
And 15 years ago or so, that changed kind of overnight. I don't know exactly who the librarian was, the person who was teaching at some library school or something, but all of a sudden, librarians and teachers went, oh, comics are fantastic. You got something to add?
Yeah, I found that there was a pre-conference at the American Library Association National Convention in 2002, I think.
Okay.
Put on by Mike Pollack, and they got like Neil Gaiman and Jeff Smith and Colleen Doran
Yeah.
to appear at that. And I think that was kind of a watershed event. It kept coming up.
yeah, the ALA was real receptive to getting comics.
Yeah.
And we set up at the Texas Library Association deal for about four years in a row. It's interesting library stuff. We did these catalogs with everything. We broke down graphic novels and did them for the TLA, and we set up at these things. And we would go and set up there expecting to get orders like crazy. Man, it's such a hard thing to try and get any penetration into library systems to get orders, but they do all order them. They just are resistant to do it through the comic thing, man. That's a whole another deal. But you're absolutely right. That was the time, and that was when it started, and it just snowballed.
Just to speak to that, a certain chunk of that is because when they buy from the library distributors, they're getting things like coded in such a way that they enter it into their systems very
That's
differently
true, but
than we deal with
there's
it today.
also a mafia approach
sure.
to getting any comic-related place onto a prescribed vendor list for the library. So, you know, all of our sales end up being, we've got 2 libraries, we sell into Fort Bend County, and even that's limited, and we sell to the Houston Public Library. And we've had orders from other HISD and different places at various times in small amounts, but all of our library sales are actually physically librarians coming into the store and ordering from us, because the funding and every bit of it, every step of it is a hassle. Not for
Yeah, we gotta go pretty fast here. I have one more question I just wanna ask, because it was in my original notes, air freight wars. Did you guys have that, was that only a left coast thing?
We had the two warehouses, it was a deal.
Okay.
Yeah, when Diamond and Capital, it was a deal about who got it first. for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and so the air freight wars there was such a demand to get the comics on the shelf first, that at least on the West Coast especially, it was a huge problem that people were paying so much money to bring in the comics, they weren't making any money doing it, but they were stealing away the customers from other stores. It was a horror show. Eventually,
3 hours in the morning to go to 5 or 6 o'clock when the freight comes in.
We had
We were
a
in Diamond's
store that was
backyard.
having everything busted, I used to get put it out Thursday afternoon.
Wow.
When Friday morning was where everybody else had it. And 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd be unpacking their stuff. They'd put it out on the walls, didn't even do subscriptions until they closed that night. So they'd say, I get phone calls the next day from customers that, oh, well, my other store didn't have it yesterday because they sold it before they ever did subscriptions.
crazy. Okay, closing statements. Does anybody have anything they want to say that they didn't say already?
Comics are entertainment. What? Comics are entertainment.
Comics are entertainment.
Read more
Forget
comics.
that.
Read more comics. Yeah.
Going the wrong way.
Yeah. Thanks for sitting through, listening to us.
Thank you.
I would love to see more of these kinds of things happen at conventions because, the history of retail, it is a secret most of the time. And nobody knows very much about it. And a lot of the earliest guys are dying and stuff. And, it's a real problem. So
It'll just make us the earliest guys.
yeah, well, I was the young guy once, Anyway,